Hello.
It works? Excellent.
Yeah, does this? Yeah, okay. Hey, welcome to a very early morning session, and thanks for everyone who made it out this early. We're here to talk about Cockpit today. I'm Lars. I'm working as a developer on the Cockpit team at Red Hat.
Yeah, and I'm Andreas, and I work as a designer on Cockpit.
Cool. So first of all, we want to ask a question in the room. Who is already familiar with Cockpit or has heard about Cockpit? Ooh, almost everyone. This is awesome. So we did a good job the last years, I guess. And who is using Cockpit or has used Cockpit before? Yeah, still some hands are up. So since we know that a lot of people already know it, and this confirmed it again, we want to give a more advanced talk today by talking about how we can move Cockpit into more advanced use cases. We're doing this because we get a lot of feedback, and many people have the impression that Cockpit is a tool for absolute beginners and people that are novices, don't know stuff about the Linux command line. And I mean, we're a bit to blame here because this is what it says on our website, right? It says Cockpit is a server manager that makes it easy to administer Linux servers via a web browser, right? Like that already hints a little bit towards, if you know stuff, you don't need this. So what we're going to do, we figured out a few advanced use cases, and for the next 20, 25 minutes, we will introduce you to some of them, and then we want to open the discussion and ask what people are using it for, and how we could make it better and more helpful for you guys. But yeah, I mean, it is a great tool for beginners. We don't want to say it won't be anymore. So let's start with a quick overview of how it's good for beginners.
All right. Yeah, so let's take a quick look how it's a good tool for beginners. So let's see if I can get this video running. All right, so this is a fairly simple case. So we come in Fedora Server and a couple of other places by default. And on the console here in the VM, I get a helpful message that I can go into the web browser. I log in with my regular username and password, no special account. It's just your regular account with the capabilities of what that account has. And then get a quick overview of the server. Let's do something simpler here. Let's change the time zone because I'm no longer in Sweden. I am in Czech Republic. So we change it from Sweden to Prague. Yes. And it happens immediately. Yeah, now it's in that time zone. But another very basic functionality of a system is to keep it secure and up to date. So here we have the software updates. It's going to load for a short minute, and then we get a good overview. Okay, what's new on the system? We have some security updates. We see the CVE numbers and some general information about the updates. And then we can do security, all the updates or only the security updates. So it's something we added just over the last couple of months. And how do I advance here? Yeah, this guy. All right. And since Cockpit runs in a web browser, you can access it from any device. You can access it from a regular Fedora laptop. You can, by default, on a Windows laptop, without any extra software, you can run it and connect to your servers without installing PuTTY, any of that. And when we say that it runs on any device, we really mean that it runs on any device. So recently we did some work to adapt to make our UI more responsive, so you can actually use it on your phone. And since we have a built-in terminal, you can now get this experience that everyone has been looking forward to.
Senior newcomers. So this is total beginners, right? I mean, everybody knows the concept of a time zone and the concept of updates and security vulnerabilities. It's in the news all the time. But there are a lot of things that I would have to read a manual anyway, right? For example, setting up a RAID thing or something. But if I come from a different system, say I'm a Windows admin and I've been doing this for 10 years or something, I know everything about RAID. I know everything about technology, maybe, right? But do I know how to set one up on Linux? I mean, this is how you do it, right? I mean, to be honest, most Linux people don't know how to do this. You need to know all these concepts, like device names and the shell itself, and like all these commands, and you need to know how fstab is formatted, and how VI works and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so,
and I mean, and this is a very different skill set from knowing everything about RAID and how many disks you need in a RAID 5 array, how many, what it does with regard to the striping versus the mirroring. But even if you know that stuff, so you know RAID, right? You need to learn all of these commands.
Right. But I mean,
and amazingly, also you need to learn VI, I guess, which is an adventure in itself.
So yeah, and, Cockpit can help you here too, if the video works. And obviously, as a total beginner, I couldn't do this. Like, I don't know what a RAID is. I don't know all this stuff. But as somebody who comes from somewhere else, I see something that's immediately familiar to me. I don't need to read another manual or something like this. I can set up the RAID device here, select the disks that I want in there. The size and that kind of stuff. And it's all kind of, self-explanatory for people that, are familiar with the concept already. And also get a nice overview and everything. Cool.
All right, yeah, and here we see the simple actions. You can stop the RAID. You can do scrubbing. Obviously, you see the disks in the array, and you get the content. Just format it. Give it a nice name. You can go with the default, or you just specify a mount point.
If you know what these are already.
And then critically, it's also like mount and boot, which just adds an entry to the etc fs tab. And there we go. All right, and then we have another one, which is Cockpit as a tool for experts in a different field. So this is useful if, say, you're a developer and you, on a daily basis, you run a lot of VMs for development. So you know everything about the verge command in and out, right? Like how to start, how to stop, everything about that. But every once in a while, you run into a more uncommon task. Say, something you run into like maybe every 6 months, that you need to check the status of the network device that the virtual machine is bridged to. How would I do that in the CLI? Well, I would probably do a verge dump of XML, and then I would grep for the string network, and then I would jump over to a completely different command with a completely different syntax, in this case nmcli, provided I run network manager for my network. And then I need to figure out the exact syntax for that and show it. How we do this in Cockpit, let me see. And this is the work of Marek that is sitting up there. Hello.
Thank you.
Okay, so here we have the virtual machine on the host. This is some basic stats of it. We see the disks. And here we see the network of this virtual machine and also its source. We can click it. And it jumps us over to the network page of that specific device, where we can now, change the settings of that. So we try to do a lot of this deep linking between between different sections of the UI. Yeah. Let's see if I can advance next here. Come on. Right.
Cool. So now we talked about, experts in different fields or experts from different domains, and also total beginners. But what's with the people, that go from the one to the other, people that want to learn? And the cool thing about Cockpit, which probably you've all heard Steph say, that Cockpit is a real Linux session in your browser. The exclamation point is very important. What this means is that Cockpit doesn't have any state by itself, right? It uses the normal Linux APIs and commands that you would use from the command line as well. You connect with your browser to the Cockpit WS, which is a little web server, and it just uses all the Linux APIs, right? It logs in as the same user. You have the same credentials. If that user has sudo rights or something, then Cockpit uses sudo. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So what this enables you to do is to use Cockpit side by side with the stuff on the command line, right? You can do that. So let's say I'm learning Docker, right? Let's say I've never used the Docker command before. I don't know about containers. I don't know anything about this. So what do? I go to the Docker page and read their guide. So I've checked out their guide, and I've added the Docker file and that kind of stuff. And I just keep Cockpit open in the background while I'm, typing the commands. I hope you can see this. This is doing a Docker build. While I'm typing the commands that the guide shows me. And while I do this, and I think we have to wait for it to pull in the video. While I do this, I already see in the background, okay, it's something about containers, something about images. I don't really know because I just started, learning about it. And I see on the command line it's doing stuff. And in a bit, you'll see that you see that stuff fill in because Cockpit is reactive and it's using exactly the same APIs, so it's showing you immediately what's going on in the system. So in a bit, you will see the two images once it's downloaded. Next time we cut the video.
We should, yeah. Also, I mean, it's a implementation detail.
So yeah, here we go, right? Like you see, like the base image is on my system now, and also that image that I just created with that Docker file, and also, there's a container like coming up every now and then. So I guess it's doing the commands that I wrote in the Docker file or something like this. And immediately I can go in, look at the image, play around a little bit with it, and get a much better feel for it than if I would just were at the command line, where I would have to learn a lot of other commands before I could have this kind of introspection. And then the guide tells me to run my virtual machine, to run my container, and I see, oh yeah, it's running there. Look at this, and I can look at it. Yeah, it's running my command that I put in there. This makes sense, and I learn about the SHAs and all that kind of stuff. And I Control-C it, and I see, oh, it's still hanging around. So that's concepts in Docker that I don't necessarily know from the beginning, but they get immediately clear, where it's like, oh yeah, I need to clean this up, or pass --rm or something. So it really helps me get better overview of the whole system, and also get confirmation that the tasks that I'm doing work. And so yeah, here I've run it again in detached mode, and I see that it's running, but not active on the command line anymore. And I can stop it from here, and if something goes wrong, I can always see what's going on, and it's much easier to learn this way. But what about going the other way, right? Like if I do something in Cockpit, for example, you look at the run dialog, I can explore a bit and see what else is possible, and it's like, oh, I can set the amount of CPU that it can use or something. But what if I want to know what the specific command for this is? Maybe we will do something in the future there directly in Cockpit, but what we have right now is from our homepage we have linked we call it the features page, or something like this, where for every component of Cockpit we describe what we use internally for this. So for example, for the network it would say, we use the network manager for it, or here we use Docker, so that you can then jump to that correct documentation for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
This is really weird. So yeah, that's Cockpit as a tool for learners, but we also have real experts.
And I mean, like another aspect of the fact that it uses all of the APIs directly as a real session is the fact that, like, well, even as a full-time admin with tons of Linux experience, like, you don't actually know all the commands inside and out by heart. So let me show you a little demo here. All right, so I mean, look, this is a really simple case where you just do a user add because you want to add a new user to the session. Say you want to create an account for Bob Dylan. Then you write it like this, and he gets a nice little username there. All right, user is created. And then we can jump over to the accounts page. I'm going to see him show up there, right? Just created. Because in this case, we actually want to do a more seldom thing. Maybe I haven't done this before, but what if I want to set the account expiration? Regularly, if I would do this from the CLI, I would need to then try to remember, what is this thing that I never ever do with regards to the user account? Because usually I never expire my accounts. But in this case, it's easy to just do this more uncommon task.
Right, and everyone has these tasks, right?
Everyone, yeah, one or two.
What's that command line switch again? I don't know. How do I pass the date here? I don't know. This is maybe our biggest example is Cockpit as a tool for troubleshooting. We already hear this a lot from people that they use it for that. And it's really, really useful for that because, you get these big overviews. We have very much higher information density on the web page than you can have in a terminal. And you get these overview pages where you see all the stuff that's going on in a specific system at a time. And this is even really good for cloud deployments, right? Where this one machine is failing in some way, and shoot the cattle, we always say. But maybe you want to look what was wrong with it so that the disease doesn't spread.
Yeah, and this is what you would do on a farm. Actually, you would easily kill off the pets because it's very cheap to get a cat on the countryside. But a cow is actually worth a lot of money, and you definitely don't want a particular disease to spread to the entire stock. Right.
So yeah, if you have a hardware error or anything, you often need to drill down to this one machine, and this is what Cockpit is really good at. So just as an example, here's a screenshot of our storage page. And there is actually a lot of stuff going on, right? Like for example, or let's imagine something goes wrong, right? And you don't know what, but it might be storage related. So you go on this page, you immediately see, one of my disks is full, or maybe there is a disk missing from the one RAID that I have set up, or the throughput is through the roof. Or there might be a hardware error in the log or something. So we have all this information very densely packed in this one overview, which is much quicker and you don't forget anything compared to if you were to type all that stuff on the command line.
Yeah, and another case of troubleshooting that is currently in development is something for, which is a very heavy troubleshooting case, is some work we're doing with regards to the firewall. So we knew we wanted to do something with regards to the local firewall on the machine. But with a firewall, it's a lot of capabilities. You have possible IP masquerading, you have port forwarding, and network zones and all of these capabilities. So we didn't know quite in what then to start. So we decided to try and identify the biggest troubleshooting issue that people had. And we did it by, so the thing is when you buy a Red Hat Enterprise Linux subscription, one of the big things you get is also support. And you can then file support issues with what you have, right? So we decided to go through all support cases that was tagged with firewall and try to identify, just to rank them and figure out what was the biggest issue. And after going through this data, we figured out that one of the biggest, most common problems people had was, okay, I installed and I started the service, but I can't access this from this other computer, and I'm not sure what's going on. Is it something that the service failed, or is it something, And I don't know why this is. So a very common answer then from support was one of the things you can try to do is to disable the firewall. And in a lot of cases, that just worked. But it then opened another issue, which is that, so humans are very goal-oriented. Once you achieve the goal you're set up to solve, then you're satisfied. One case of this is, You know, like if you ever whenever you withdraw money from an ATM, you notice the thing where you always need to withdraw the card before you can get the money. And this is something called a fortune function, and this is for a very particular specific reasons. Because when the first ATMs were introduced in the 60s and the 70s, a lot of people would forget their cards in the ATM itself. Because, you know, you go to the ATM, you put in your card, you put in your PIN, you say the number of money you want, and you get the money. And once you get the money, you solved your goal, and you just take it and walk it away and forget the card, which is like a very large security risk because then someone else can just pick up the card, right? So this is why like every ATM you come across these days has this fortune function that you have to take the card so you don't forget the card before you can take the money, because the money is your goal. And similar, if your goal is to let through the data traffic and that goal is achieved by disabling the firewall, then a lot of people will end up being more insecure as a direct consequence of this. So this is a work in progress, and here is our proposed firewall page. So you see like the regular stuff, right? You can stop the firewall. You get a list of open services, and you can add new services. But the critical difference here is that it also has suggestions of things that actually wants to go through the firewall. And like with a simple click, you can like allow that service. And also you notice like, you know, the Red Hat high availability thing, it doesn't have it's not one port, it's like a group of ports, right? Which then would allow you to run that service. The functionality, I would say, like compared to some other firewall UIs, it's fairly limited by now. But this is because we want to solve one problem at a time. So if it can solve this one issue for now, then a lot of people will be A, more happy because, you know, their stuff works. B, they won't have to reach out to support and maybe wait like a day or 2 or 3 before they're able to resolve their thing. And also they will be more secure by design.
And yeah, there's 1,000 more examples for this, right? SE Linux comes to mind, which is exactly the same. It's like, yeah, turn off SE Linux, everything works now. Or, you know, if a systemd service fails, you go on the page, you see it's in red, oh, something failed, right? Or, you know, you have an Ethernet card without an address. Or, you know, there was a recent update, and so you can narrow down the problem by just looking at the recent updates, especially if you have automatic updates turned on. So yeah, this troubleshooting thing is maybe one of the biggest use cases for people that are a bit more advanced than total beginners. But yeah, this were our, you know, few examples of this. In general, Cockpit is moving very, very fast. In fact, the stuff that we just showed you, a lot of that was stuff that we just did this last year, right? Software updates is new, the mobile design is new, the firewall we're just working on.
Yeah, so we release every 2 weeks.
We release every 2 weeks with new stuff, so it's really cool. And the whole point of this talk is to show you that we are having these more advanced use cases in mind. And because, like Andreas said, because we're starting with the more contained one use case kind of things, we end up with a lot of things that are fairly simple, but solve one problem really well. But you know, we're getting there. We're working on it, and we're adding new stuff all the time. So yeah, thanks for this. And now we want to open a little bit of a discussion about how you think that this could be helpful for you or not helpful for you, or you know, what kind of stuff you would have in mind for us. And I think we have, yeah, this is how you can reach us if you want to. Yes, please.
I represent security technologies for Red Hat, so I know that there is a list of different integration points with Cockpit. So the list is more than half a dozen things. And looking at the UI, right now the UI is really clean and intuitive. security think about half a dozen, and somebody else in the audience thinks about half a dozen other things. So it will very quickly grow. So what is your strategy for keeping UI still lean and intuitive with all these features and functionality coming your way from different things?
That's a good question.
Could you repeat that?
I repeat the question, yeah. So the question is, there's a lot of features that we could add, especially security-related ones, and everybody will have something. But our UI now is fairly simple and fairly lean, and the question is, if we add all of these features, it will get overloaded fairly quickly. What is our strategy to deal with this? And I think I'll bounce this to you, since you're one of the designers.
I would say, so first of all, it's like we showed all of these different types of people, right? And I would say they have, to some extent, different priority for us. The current Linux senior admins, they are fairly fine today with the CLI commands. So if in the cases where we need to bounce off some part of the entire flow to the CLI, then that's completely fine. And I would also say that it's very much by the case-on-case basis. There is a bunch of stuff you can do, since you do have access to 2 different kind of sessions. It's also, I think.
So the answer is complicated.
It is complicated, and this is one of the hardest things we face on a day-to-day basis, right? How do we weigh these different use cases against each other, and what is the most critical problems people have today?
Yeah, exactly.
It's never. I would never say it's a goal to match the CLI commands 100%, all the functionality, but to match the functionality that we need for people who need or would benefit from a graphical user interface.
Yeah, and this is why we're doing stuff like for the firewall, where we actually look at customer data, or where we try to be a bit more data-driven about what are the actual problems people have. And we can be a little bit, not everybody gets their little feature or switch in, because we want a little bit of evidence that this is actually needed by a lot of people. So I guess this is the simple answer, but it's, the real answer is it's very complicated, and it's very hard to balance these things. Yes, please.
I'm not sure if it's the same question, but how about security of the UI? Is that a concern that comes up?
How do you mean security of the UI? How do you mean?
Running in a browser and security around that.
Well,
could you repeat the question first?
The question is, since we're running in the browser, what about security, right? I mean, in an SSH session, you also are, on a different machine somewhere, and I mean, we're trying hard, I guess. We did a lot of things. We used modern web technologies. We use CSP and everything that a browser can give us, so that no page can go rogue and get data from somewhere else or send it somewhere else. And we also have the separation between the web server and the thing that actually does the commands. So that's a different process, which is the process with your credentials. So we try to have a security boundary there. I guess that's the answer, yeah. Probably Steph
Did you
can
have a
say
comment
lot
as
more.
well on it?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Right, but you have centralized authentication. So the authentication is there, the encryption is there, the separation of the processes is there. So from the security model, it's not that different from any kind of application of that kind.
Yeah, the security model is not that different, but I agree a web browser has a much bigger, surface of things that it could happen.
There's still certain things missing, like being able to differentiate what you show as the set of available
Who can see
tabs that depends on who you are when you log in. For example, if I not experiments I've read with Cockpit, and I've been doing pre-APA and some AD Cockpit apps recently, I actually stumble on, if I don't have enough permissions to run some commands on the system, I actually break badly the full UI because of the responses that I get.
That is a bug. So yeah, the question or the comment.
There's no API in Cockpit that allows you to easily, from these applications, to hide themselves, not allowing to show even.
Which I would say, is true for the CLI as well, right? I mean, I can, even if I can't execute a certain command, I can still run it, right?
Let me repeat the comment
Yeah,
first.
exactly.
So the comment was about that if you don't have specific permissions to do something, we should hide or disable UI elements, and that apparently some of the stuff right now breaks if you don't have the appropriate permissions. And yeah, if it breaks, it's a bug. And we definitely do have this. We do try to disable, you know, if you don't have, if you're not in sudo group, then we do disable some of the buttons that that you can't do. Otherwise, if you can press them, then there should be an appropriate error message or something. But yeah, if that doesn't work, then it's a bug. But we do have these APIs. Steph has a comment for that. Do you want the microphone?
Lars said earlier, Cockpit is a real Linux session. I mean, if you're logged in as you have permission to do anything that you can do. If you're logged in as root, obviously anything root can do. If you can escalate with sudo to root, then you can do root commands as well. Matches the thing. But you have a valid point, and that's for all of us here to think about. Because the story of consistency between policy kit, sudo, and various tools for limiting what a user can do, auditing what a user can do, escalating privileges, is not a complete clean story in Linux today. It's an area that's very fragmented, and that's where we're seeing it. Cockpit doesn't try to solve this, it exposes it, unfortunately, to you. And you're right, there are some bugs where things should be hidden or disabled. But that's more advisory. Cockpit uses exactly the Linux security model and this privilege escalation model. And so for anyone who's interested in this area, solving it, that's the level at which it gets solved. Not at the Cockpit level or not anywhere else, but at the Linux level. Let's work to make that a more coherent piece of Linux.
Yes, please.
So you showed that you can do several commands to summon the UI. So for example, mounting and trying to do stuff. If I would want to write another UI to it, is it well separated or is it really embedded into Cockpit?
Now, if you wanted to do another UI, so let me see if I can go back here. Yeah, the question is, if I want to make another piece of UI, is it a very like locked together experience, or is there like parts I can modify of it? So if you see like the system, services, containers, logs, storage, these are the navigation bits, right? But then the entire page, the entire white area, it's its own iframe. So as long as it's very easy to just like make a plugin and add like your completely like specific UI for what it is you need.
Yeah, and on a technical level, we have a JavaScript API that you can use to open files, run commands, do dbus calls, all that kind of stuff. So this is what we're using. And you would have to use that library and obviously the site on the server, but then you could write any UI that you want on top of that. Does that answer your question?
And if I want a non-graphical UI?
Well, this is APIs for a web browser. Yeah, a non-graphical UI, I guess. Use the commands that we're using in the backend as well. I mean, we just use the normal stuff. Yes, please.
Yeah, if you, for example, have a very basic samples installation and you install Cockpit, and the features that are available on the left bar, for example, if I install Docker, is the containers option there is going to appear, or do I need to install additional?
Most of these are you have a yeah, the question was if I install the Cockpit package on say a CentOS installation, what will I get the entire UI by default? So let's see, on CentOS, what the Cockpit package does, it gives you a couple of pages. I'm pretty sure it gives you premises system, the services, the logs, and maybe the accounts page. I'm not quite sure. But for Docker, you need a separate package called Cockpit Docker. But once you install that, it would show up in the UI.
Okay, so for other components, I going to need the Cockpit plugin for that component.
Yeah, and we do this because, for example, since we ship on so many different operating systems, we ship on RHEL, we ship on CentOS, we ship on Fedora, Debian, Ubuntu. What else?
Everything.
Arch, everything. These operations, like these distributions, they have very different capabilities. So for Red Hat Atomic, for example, you wouldn't have regular RPM-based updates, but you would have the OS3 updates. So then those are two different packages. We have like either, updates for package hit or updates using OS3. So that allows then the distribution to make a very tailored and specific experience for what's most appropriate for that system.
Yeah, but personally, I mean, Docker brings its own Docker command for the command line. I think it should, in the same way, bring its own UI, right? I think it should be, the Cockpit-Docker should be a dependency of that package in the package-based system. But we're not there yet. Yeah, right now it's separate. Oh, we have this. Yeah, we have this. We have like a button, install Docker, right? If you want, or start Docker, if you want that. Like this way around always works, but the other way around, it doesn't necessarily. But that's a distribution thing, and that's a policy thing, and that's a, do people want to, pull in Cockpit stuff if they install Docker? There's like some social stuff there going on as well still. Yes, please. The question is if you can see what command is used in the background when you click on something in Cockpit. We have thought about this a bit. Right now you cannot. What we have right now is the features page, which is linked from cockpitproject.org, which shows you for every of those pages that we have by default, it shows you what we're using in the background and how we invoke the commands. And probably it could be better documentation, but like stuff is there already to get you started. We have thought a bit about, having a little help thing or something that is like, if you want to do this on the command line, do this. But we haven't, given it enough thought yet to actually implement it.
Yeah, and likewise, I mean, it's not only a matter of the commands, it's also, well, what if I wanted to do this through Ansible? If I wanted to completely automate it instead of like going in and like doing So it's definitely a possibility for the future.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's actually a very good idea because especially for if you're learning stuff, right? It's like, okay, I click this all the time. So it might be useful for me to know how to do this in a more efficient way. And then still use Cockpit for, the things that I don't do as often, like set the expiration date of the account or something like this. Yeah? Sorry, can you repeat a bit louder, please?
So let's say I'm running some commands and it has used response. And so my your DOM also told me to use that. So how I can improve the performance of loading page.
Steph, you understood? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question anymore.
Let's say you implement a page and it's performing a task, calling a command or an API that then produces a large amount of data. And that would hit performance significantly of showing in the web browser. And what we typically suggest is, and Cockpit does this too, I know we've used it several times, is we will send a small tool, a shell script, or instead of sending all that data back to the web browser, finish the processing on the server, and then only send back what we need. processing and finishing on the server rather than moving it off the web network so you can limit the information that comes back.
Yeah, thanks for answering that. Sorry that I didn't understand. Yeah, I agree. We try to send as little or as close to the data that we show on the page over the wire that as possible. Because you don't want big amounts of data on that website anyway, but yeah, you have to do that processing sometimes on the server side. But we sometimes even shell out to grep or something, right? It's a little bit funny, but it works. Yes, please.
Some of the patterns that we use in design seem like very similar to serverless. So the question is, have you looked into the relation of the models and whether there is any deeper relationship out of that or not?
The question is if we if we have looked into the relationship to serverless, or
Yes.
yeah, but I mean
From architecture point.
from architecture, no, I guess no. We haven't looked into.
I'm
I haven't looked into
unfortunately
serverless that much.
I'm
But
familiar
Cockpit is
with
about servers, so serverless doesn't work anyway.
No.
No, sorry, we haven't yet. Yeah. Yeah.
Cockpit is able to provide information from multiple servers, correct?
Yes, you can. The question is if Cockpit is able to provide information from multiple servers. Yes, you don't need the web server running on every machine, but if you have it running on one machine, you can SSH into another machine from within Cockpit and then use the normal UI and go there.
Yeah, and
Known thing that is not going to work with this kind of setup, like some limitations on part of Cockpit of providing the information, or not?
If there's any limitation of what exactly?
When you have these multiple servers being displayed in the Cockpit UI, is there any known limitation, and what kind of information is going to provide?
The question is if there's any known limitation if you have a lot of servers there. And Steph is nodding vehemently, so I will.
A lot of limitations. If you were to connect to 1,000 servers, it's making an SSH connection to each of them. That would not scale. This is not. You would not interact with 1,000 servers at the same time. If you look up on the page there, apparently it's not clickable, but there's other areas. We're looking at the server UI. There's a Kubernetes dashboard. There are other ways where you talk to an API that then talks out to 1,000 machines. And that's really the way to go, rather than trying to interact with all those machines directly via JavaScript or Linux APIs or something. It needs to be another layer. And thankfully those layers are there. And Cockpit has some UIs for some of them.
Yeah, but my was not 4,000, but like 5 or 10.
Yeah, Cockpit is like 20 or so. I think there's a hard limit in the UI. After you try to add the 21st, it will just repeat.
yeah, and also you get a little some graphs for them. You get like, oh, how is the CPU load for like these 5 systems compared to each other? So you can see if there's like compare them and see there's like outliner that like just keeps eating more CPU than the other ones, and you're like, what's going on with this guy? But yeah, for then deeper investigation into what each of those machines are doing, you need to then dive in deeper and check in my hand.
When you are designing Cockpit, do you have some specific type of administrator in mind that take advantage of it and explain more, some networking administrator or some database administrator or some services administrator of the operating system?
Yeah, so the question was, when we designed the UIs, do we have any particular type of administrator in mind? I would say like so far it's like very much not specific like that it's like, oh, this is a database administrator, this is like some other kind of administrator, storage administrator. But I would say like most of the time we tend to aim for very, at least for now, very general kind of administrator, and then leaning more towards the junior admin, or also heavily on an admin with experience from another operating system. So like Windows administrators are very critical for us to be able to tap into that market a little bit. But not more specific than that. But that's probably something we should be more specific about. That you're able to carry out very specific workloads.
It seems that you define personas per area. When you're working in a specific area, you define the use cases for personas, but then you don't aggregate those personas, for example, between different areas.
Right.
Into sort of a function. I am an administrator of that kind of payload.
Right.
That might be useful.
Definitely.
Cool. There was a question up there.
I have a question regarding to manage multiple servers. If I set some code via Cockpit, I mean some system settings and etc., can I repeat it to the other host of group host, the same thing?
The question is if I administer a server and do some settings there, if I can repeat those somewhere else in an automated way. And the answer is no. Cockpit it shows you the live status of a system. We have been thinking about this a little bit, but yeah, like I said before, we don't target this use case at all right now because automation is much better done in where you write stuff down and have it like in version control and stuff like this than UI. So we concentrate on that.
Yeah, and we definitely try to stay away from those specific things where you want to run a repeated task on several things because there are tools that do that kind of stuff so much better.
Yeah, and UIs for automation are notoriously hard to design.
I think Terry had a question also.
Yeah, I was actually just going to make a comment from the Red Hat product portfolio perspective. We are exploring how we might integrate Cockpit into other products. So one of them is Satellite, which is our management solution for managing large environments. We have many customers that register 50,000 systems to Satellite, and then Satellite manages the content, establishes that trust relationship, and pushes out security patches to the entire infrastructure. And that's how our large customers manage their large environment in a supportable way. And so we're trying to think, what are all the use cases and stories where we can pull Cockpit into that management flow? Like the idea of, I've already got this trust relationship with all of these thousands of systems. So while wouldn't it be great if occasionally when I need to get into that node, I have a nice little link where I can hop into the cockpit of any particular node, and how can we extend that further and start thinking more in terms of, oh, well, I've got this cluster of 10 nodes that's clustered to perform a specific function. So does that help with the workflow experience to be able to hop into the cockpit interface, maybe shut down the database and prepare for like a rolling upgrade or of a cluster or something like that? And really thinking about that whole workflow experience from the administrator and how can we tie Cockpit into that workflow. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, so thanks very much for showing up this early. We
Yeah.
are tired as well.
Right. And yeah, if you need to reach out to us, the website is there, our GitHub repository. We have a IRC channel on Freenode, and you can also email us individually.